Breaking tonight, Canada just committed $19 billion to the F-35 program. But Stockholm is offering something better, the Gripen.
Procurement. Here's what they won't tell you. The F-35 cost $36,000 per flight hour. The Gripen, just $8,000. That's a 53.
Breaking tonight, Canada's defense procurement strategy just reached a critical crossroads. Stockholm didn't pitch, they demonstrated superiority. Tensions are rising in Ottawa's defense corridors tonight. Canada committed $19 billion to the F-35 program, but instead of certainty, they inherited maintenance nightmares and capability gaps. Everyone believed Canada's fighter replacement would naturally default to American stealth technology. Defense analysts expected F-35 integration by 2032 without questioning alternatives. Military planners assumed fifth-generation stealth was the only viable option for Arctic sovereignty. They were all utterly incorrect. Defense Minister outlined the defense philosophy clearly. The Gripen isn't just cost-effective, it's operationally superior for nations requiring Arctic capability, rapid deployment, and true sovereignty. Translation: Sweden just told Canada that there's a smarter path forward, and it doesn't involve Washington's most expensive fighter jet. And what happened next? The fighter jet that operates flawlessly from frozen highways in northern Sweden reveals exactly why Canadian defense strategy needs immediate recalibration, while the F-35 program continues drowning in cost overruns and maintenance dependencies. Dear viewers, between 2024 and now, something extraordinary happened in global fighter procurement. Nations started questioning the fifth-generation hype. Budget realities collided with operational requirements. And Sweden, quiet, competent Sweden, became the choice every smart military was reconsidering. This isn't just about choosing between two fighter jets. This is about Canada's operational sovereignty, fiscal responsibility, and whether Ottawa will continue subsidizing American defense contractors while sacrificing capabilities that actually matter for Canadian security. Let's address the elephant in the hangar. The F-35 Lightning II was supposed to revolutionize air combat, stealth technology, sensor fusion, network-centric warfare. The marketing was spectacular. The reality, not so much. Here's what they told Canada. The F-35 would cost $85 million per unit. Maintenance would be straightforward. Availability rates would exceed 80%. Operational costs would remain manageable. Here's what actually happened. Unit costs ballooned to $110 million. Maintenance became so complex that only specialized facilities could service them. Availability rates struggled to reach 55% in some air forces. Operational costs per flight hour exceeded $36,000, nearly double initial projections. Defense officials quietly acknowledged that F-35 sustainment costs over the aircraft's lifetime could reach $77 billion. That's not a typo. $77 billion to keep 88 aircraft flying. Translation: Canada just committed to funding American defense contractors for the next 40 years, while sacrificing funding for actual operational capability. But here's what frustrates defense analysts who actually understand Canadian requirements. None of this addresses what Canada genuinely needs. You want to understand why the Gripen is the intelligent choice? Look at a map of Canada. 3 oceans, Arctic archipelagos stretching thousands of kilometers, remote communities requiring sovereignty patrols, vast distances with limited infrastructure. Now consider Canada's operational reality. You need fighters that can deploy from remote airstrips. You need rapid turnaround times with minimal ground crew. You need aircraft that don't require pristine runways and climate-controlled hangars. You need systems simple enough that Canadian technicians can maintain them without calling American contractors. The F-35 requires 8,000-foot runways, specialized maintenance facilities, climate-controlled hangars for stealth coating preservation, American security clearance for certain maintenance procedures, complex logistics chains for proprietary parts. The Gripen operates from highway strips in Swedish Lapland, dispersed bases with minimal infrastructure, frozen runways in Arctic conditions, can be maintained by 4 technicians, and refueled in under 10 minutes. A defense analyst explained the F-35 dilemma perfectly. We're buying a Ferrari to drive on gravel roads. It's impressive technology, but completely mismatched to our actual mission requirements. Translation: Ottawa prioritized American political relationships over Canadian operational reality. Dear viewers, this is where the Gripen story becomes fascinating. Because while everyone focused on stealth and sensors, Sweden focused on something more valuable: operational flexibility, that actually matters in real-world scenarios. Let's talk numbers, because this is where the F-35 narrative completely collapses. Canada committed to 88 F-35s at approximately $19 billion acquisition cost. That's just the purchase price. Now add sustainment costs over 40 years, $77 billion according to Canadian estimates. Total program cost, $96 billion. The Gripen alternative, 88 Gripen is now trim at approximately $85 million per unit equals $7.5 billion acquisition. Sustainment costs over 40 years estimated at $35 billion based on Swedish and Brazilian operational data. Total program cost, $42.5 billion. That's a $53.5 billion difference. Let me repeat that because it's staggering. Canada could save $53 billion by choosing Gripen over F-35. What could Canada do with $53 billion? Modernize the entire Navy, upgrade Arctic surveillance infrastructure, invest in cyber warfare capabilities, fund the Canadian Rangers program for decades, build actual defensive capabilities instead of funding Lockheed Martin's profit margins. But the cost advantage goes deeper than acquisition and sustainment. Operational costs matter critically for air forces that actually fly their aircraft. F-35 operational cost per flight hour, $36,000. Gripen operational cost per flight hour, $8,000. If Canada flies 88 aircraft for 200 hours annually, that's 17,600 flight hours. With F-35s, $633 million annually. With Gripens, $140 million annually. Annual savings, $493 million. Over 40 years, that's nearly $20 billion in additional operational savings. Translation, Canada could maintain an actual combat-ready air force instead of hangar queens waiting for American maintenance contractors. Now let's discuss combat capabilities because this is where F-35 advocates claim invincibility. But the stealth, they cry. Fifth-generation sensor, they insist. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Stealth matters significantly less than marketing departments claim, especially in the combat scenarios Canada would actually face. Canada isn't planning deep penetration strikes into heavily defended airspace. Canada needs sovereignty patrols, intercept capabilities, defense of Arctic approaches, support for NORAD missions, search and rescue coordination. For these missions, stealth provides minimal advantage while creating massive operational headaches. You know what matters more? Being able to actually fly the aircraft. Having fighters available when threats emerge. Maintaining readiness without bankrupting the defense budget. The Gripen excels precisely where Canada needs excellence. Arctic operations. The Gripen operates routinely in Swedish Lapland, conditions virtually identical to Canada's Arctic. It handles extreme cold, icing conditions, and limited infrastructure. The F-35's stealth coatings are notoriously vulnerable to temperature extremes and require constant maintenance. Rapid deployment. Sweden designed the Gripen for highway strip operations, enabling dispersed basing that denies adversaries the ability to destroy your air force on the ground. Canada's vast geography makes this capability invaluable. The F-35 requires permanent, vulnerable air bases. Quick turnaround. A 4-person ground crew can refuel, rearm, and service a Gripen in under 10 minutes. The F-35 requires extensive ground support and maintenance checks between sorties. In an actual conflict, sortie generation rates determine who controls airspace. Electronic warfare. The Gripen E features a gallium nitride-based electronic warfare suite that rivals or exceeds F-35 capabilities. Sweden's electronic warfare technology is world-class, developed specifically to counter Russian systems. The Gripen can jam enemy radars, disrupt missile guidance, and operate effectively in contested electromagnetic environments. Interoperability. Both aircraft integrate with NATO systems, but the Gripen does so without making Canada dependent on American security clearances and proprietary technology access. That's called sovereignty. An Air Force colonel explained Gripen philosophy to international observers. We can't afford aircraft that sit in hangars. Every Gripen must be available, deployable, and deadly. That's not marketing. That's operational necessity. Translation. Sweden designed a fighter for actual combat readiness, not PowerPoint presentations. Here's where the strategic calculation shifts dramatically. By 2028, Sweden will integrate the Taurus KEPD 350 cruise missile onto the Gripen platform. This weapon system transforms the entire conversation about standoff strike capability. The Taurus KEPD 350 provides 500-plus kilometer range, penetrator warhead capable of destroying hardened bunkers, stealth characteristics, and terrain-following capability, pre-planned and autonomous targeting. With Taurus integration, the Gripen gains long-range precision strike capability that rivals F-35 internal weapons, while maintaining the aircraft's operational flexibility advantages. You get standoff strike capability without sacrificing the ability to operate from highway strips in northern Quebec. The F-35's internal weapons bay limits payload and flexibility. The Gripen's external hardpoints provide greater weapons variety and mission adaptability. For Canada's defense requirements, mission flexibility matters more than marginal stealth advantages. Let's address the air-to-air equation directly. The Gripen E integrates the Meteor missile, widely considered the most capable beyond visual range air-to-air missile in existence. Meteor's ramjet propulsion provides greater range and terminal speed than American AMRAAM missiles. In air combat, the Gripen with Meteor equals or exceeds F-35 capabilities against any realistic threat Canada would face. This is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable for F-35 advocates. Let's discuss operational sovereignty honestly. The F-35 program requires American security clearances for certain maintenance procedures, Autonomic Logistics Information System (ALIS) that connects to American servers, proprietary software controlled exclusively by Lockheed Martin, American approval for software modifications and weapons integration. Translation: Canada doesn't fully control the aircraft it purchases. Ottawa becomes dependent on Washington and Lockheed Martin for operational decisions. The Gripen provides full technology transfer options, maintenance procedures controlled by the purchasing nation, open architecture mission systems allowing sovereign software modifications, weapons integration flexibility without manufacturer approval. Sweden sells the Gripen with sovereignty respect built into the contract. Brazil operates Gripens with domestically developed weapons and systems. Thailand maintains Gripens without Swedish contractors on site. That's true military independence. A defense procurement official acknowledged the sovereignty concern privately. Every time we want to integrate Canadian-developed systems or modify operational software on F-35s, we need American approval. That's not sovereignty, that's dependency. Translation: Canada traded operational independence for American political approval. Here's what should concern F-35 supporters. Knowledgeable air forces keep choosing Gripen when they can afford either option. Brazil evaluated both F-35 and Gripen comprehensively. They chose Gripen, not because of cost alone, but because of operational suitability, technology transfer, and sovereignty considerations. Sweden operates Gripens as their primary fighter despite having access to F-35 through political channels. They chose indigenous capability and operational flexibility over American stealth marketing. Hungary joined NATO and could purchase F-35s with alliance support. They're leasing Gripens because operational reality matters more than political optics. Thailand operates Gripen successfully in Southeast Asian conditions, proving the aircraft's versatility across climate zones and mission profiles. These aren't poor nations settling for inferior technology. These are professional air forces making informed decisions based on operational requirements and long-term sustainability. Meanwhile, F-35 operators face consistent challenges. Availability rates below 50% in some air forces, maintenance backlogs stretching months, cost overruns forcing fleet size reductions, capabilities promised but not delivered. Here's the final piece. Canadian defense planners must consider strategic timing favors Gripen decisively. The F-35 program is mature, meaning most development costs are sunk. Canada joins a supply chain already optimized for American priorities. You're buying into an established but inflexible system. The Gripen E program is actively modernizing, meaning Canadian requirements could influence development priorities. Sweden welcomes partnership and technology cooperation. You're joining a flexible, evolving platform. Additionally, global security dynamics are shifting. Arctic sovereignty is becoming critical as climate change opens new shipping routes and resource access. Russia's northern military infrastructure is expanding. China is declaring itself a near-Arctic nation. Canada needs fighters optimized for Arctic operations immediately, not fighters designed for Middle Eastern power projection that happen to operate poorly in cold weather. The CEO outlined Gripen's Arctic advantage explicitly. We design every system for northern Swedish conditions first. That's not coincidental, it's intentional. Arctic warfare is our home environment. Translation: Sweden builds fighters for Canada's actual operational environment, not American strategic priorities. Let's address the elephant in the room honestly. The F-35 choice is political, not operational. Washington expects Canada to buy American. Defense contractors lobby aggressively. Politicians worry about bilateral relationships. The optics of choosing a Swedish fighter over an American program create political anxiety. But here's what Canadian taxpayers deserve to understand. You're spending $96 billion over 40 years to maintain American political approval while receiving operationally inferior capability for Canadian requirements. The Gripen provides superior Arctic capability, better operational availability, lower costs, greater sovereignty, and combat effectiveness matching or exceeding F-35 for missions Canada actually needs to perform. The only category where F-35 wins decisively is American political approval. That's not defense procurement, that's diplomatic tribute. Dear viewers, between now and Canada's final procurement decision, something extraordinary must happen. Ottawa needs to prioritize Canadian security over American political expectations. Defense planners need to choose operational reality over stealth marketing. Taxpayers need to demand fiscal responsibility over defense contractor profits. The pattern is clear across every analysis. Gripen provides superior value for Canadian requirements. F-35 provides political cover for a strategically questionable decision. So here's the bottom line for Canada's fighter replacement program. The F-35 offers questionable stealth advantages, sensor technology matched by Gripen alternatives, operational costs that will bankrupt capability budgets, maintenance complexity that ensures poor availability, American control over Canadian sovereignty. The Gripen provides Arctic operational superiority, rapid deployment capability, cost savings exceeding $50 billion, maintenance simplicity enabling high readiness, true operational sovereignty. Which fighter jet actually serves Canadian security interests? The answer is obvious to anyone prioritizing operational requirements over political optics. Stockholm didn't just offer Canada an alternative. They offered a better solution specifically designed for the missions Canada actually needs to perform. The question now is whether Ottawa has the strategic courage to make the smart choice, or whether political considerations will force Canada into a $96 billion mistake that compromises Arctic sovereignty while enriching American defense contractors. Canada faces a defining defense procurement decision. The smart choice is clear. Whether political courage matches strategic necessity remains the critical question. That's the truth about Canada's fighter choice. Share this analysis with anyone who believes defense procurement should prioritize operational reality over political convenience. And if you're following Canadian defense strategy, military procurement decisions, or simply want the truth about what your tax dollars are actually buying, you need to be here with Canada Next. We're breaking down the stories mainstream media won't touch, the decisions politicians hope you'll ignore, and the strategic realities that determine Canada's future. Hit that subscribe button, because every week we're bringing you analysis that puts Canadian interests first, not Washington's expectations. Look, everything I've shown you tonight comes from public data and official reporting. But the conclusions, those are mine. You decide what it means.